Hey guys, Luna here, and welcome back to our life. Let's just get right into it, shall we? We've been going through two of Baxter's events right now, the sightseeing and the drink event, which the drink had quite an interesting show that I really enjoyed. But let us get into the mountain, shall we? No two summer's evenings in Sunset Bird looked quite the same. Not downtown, not at the beaches, not on the streets. Only change that anyone had seen over the years was the arrival of new tourists. Though you haven't seen any stars in the sky, you knew today was almost over from the sound of the chirping crickets. Shadow sway branches were stretching across the grass. Well, probably. You hadn't gotten the chance to experience the sunset before you got pulled over into whatever this was while trying to clarify your plans for tomorrow with Baxter. He paced back and forth between a pair of half-packed or half-unpacked, depending on how someone saw it, suitcases. Piles of folded clothes were abandoned on the bed. He leaned against the dresser, amused. It was funny. Baxter was simply grateful that you weren't hovering over his shoulder. This wasn't the first time that you'd seen it been in the condo. Baxter invited you over before, but so far it's been only the first floor. You were in the master bedroom now. As a kid, the condo was the equivalent of Fort Knox. No way in, and if someone unwanted did sneak inside, there was probably no way out. It just wasn't worth the risk. Being in that room was closer to a fantasy than it was reality, as much as someone could dream about being in a rental bedroom anyways. And yet, here you were, all thanks to Baxter, who didn't seem to realize the gravity of the situation. One of the doors to the armoire, his word for it, was ajar. Hangers rattled from the excessive force Baxter used to remove a few of his jackets. He was at least careful enough not to knock into you. Honestly, you weren't sure why he packed them at all. He never got cold enough anywhere in Southern California to wear outerwear during the winter, never mind the summer. And yet, he still brought them, no matter how much he was convinced otherwise.
So?
It would be cool in temperature, but just barely. While we won't be seeing any snow, I would suggest you bring a jacket and a sturdy pair of shoes. He pulled another zipper out of one suitcase, peering into its contents, but not deeply investigating for long before he moved on to the next thing, a drawer filled with nothing that abruptly shut. He waded past the only part of his wardrobe that remained neat and in place, a form of clothes. The suit he wore to the interactive play was perfectly arranged for use at any minute, in case there was another regal emergency. Baxter hesitated before leaving that be. His fingers grazed the top pile of the comforter as he passed. He wove through an increasingly intricate disaster area to look for something else that he hadn't made clear to you. It seemed that up until now, Baxter had been living out of suitcases, which wouldn't ordinarily strike you as a problem until he said he needed at least one of them to be empty. If only so that he could relocate his things from one to another. He was certain that he would need no more than an afternoon to pack before he arrived. But there were some things in this world that not even the likes of Baxter Ward could handle with the grace and composure. Mornings were one, personal organization was another.
I apologize.
I must apologize. He stopped in place. The corner of his eyes softened as he turned to you, brows knit together even as he busied his hands with folding a pair of pants, only to immediately throw it into the suitcase. I realize this can't be terribly entertaining. Don't worry about it. He didn't need to apologize. There wasn't any problem waiting, and besides, it was more amusing than he gave it credit for. That is one of your charm points, in for a penny, in for a pound. He chuckled, shaking his head with a quiet amusement. Content with your reply, he went back to unconsciously constructing a labyrinth of his possessions. You wondered how he fit everything into two suitcases to begin with. This entire situation made about as much sense as anything else around him, which was to say that it made a quarter of it, followed by any linear train of thoughts. The rest left much to be desired. Baxter had a tendency to work through his things in a sort of circumstantial sense, his own logic that he used to explain things as a matter of fact. So much so that you couldn't help but just take him on his word, even if the details only made sense to themselves clear later. What was happening now was even more convoluted than normal. The first point, Baxter was very suddenly announced he was going on a vacation away from his vacation. A 3-day and 2-night jaunt to the mountain lodge, a handful of hours away by his judgment. Plans were already underway as soon as he figured out where he was staying in California. Well, that's certainly something. It made sense he was trying to get more bang for his buck for his experience in the area, but that wasn't the main reason. The second point, it was a family tradition happening without his family. He and his parents always went to the Rockies in the summer, except for this time. He was staying in California. Baxter decided to make a trip out to the mountains here regardless. And that was also fine, except he wasn't prepared for the trip at all. You would have thought that someone else planned when and where it would happen, with the way he was rushing around the condo, trying to pack and trying to remember what to pack. And point three, the most particular, he went to the second room in the lodge, despite coming here alone and to visit with no one in particular. He did have some acquaintances in the state, but none of them were people he wanted to take a trip with. Audaciously, after explaining the situation, he asked you to take up the free room without missing a beat. You, a person who dated him for all of half a second. A couple's trip was kind of the thing that was more appropriate for months down the line, something to cement a relationship as steady. But apparently, being together at all was plenty enough for Baxter. The weekend was free, and you and your moms were able to accept the idea of going. Going up to the mountains to stay in the lodge was a cool opportunity. It wasn't the kind of trip that you and your family took. Not that you'd taken many trips since your breaks got busier and Liz moved away, so the prospect of traveling anywhere further than the city was exciting, even if the entire situation was pretty absurd. Negotiating with your moms went better than expected. They hadn't vetoed it immediately because you're an adult, but they weren't excited about the idea. It was one thing if you were going on a trip with the usual cast of suspects, but Baxter, a guy you met basically the other day, he was polite and well-spoken. However, your moms didn't know his parents, a rule that you thought was obsolete once you were in high school, but not so when it came to overnight trips. They eventually gave their blessing when Liz took your side in a discussion. She was convinced by the fact that you'd be staying in an entirely separate room to him. So, I have to ask, what was your plan if I said I couldn't go? Making the trip alone would not have been dissuaded me from going. Baxter's hand sought over the suitcases he was bringing on the trip. He brushed back his hair into place, turning to his side to search for another misplaced necessity.
Of course.
I thought there was a possibility I might make friends during my stay here. There was no guarantee, of course. I wouldn't have hoped to make any presumptions there. His gaze wandered, lips tightening at the corners of his mouth involuntarily. His contemplative expression faltered as he looked up from his suitcase to you. But I thought that if I did, then the trip would not be made exceptionally better with company. If not, then so be it. Acquiring a room is the difficult part. A reservation needs to be made weeks in advance, whereas canceling one only needs notice of 48 hours or more. It's taken off the bill, no questions asked. Realistically, I would only need 2 days to know if I was going alone or with company.
See?
That was the case with you, was it not? Couldn't help but shake your head in disbelief. Baxter glanced at you from the corner of his eyes, smiling silently as he took his approval and said. Baxter went back to packing, though his suitcases looked to be middling in quantities more than they'd been earlier in the evening. He glanced over his shoulder back at you, a black shoulder folded in his hands as any storage display you've seen in your life. This trip might not be an ideal time to ask, but we are speaking about the trip. I did want to ask to where your personal belongings lie, Luna. I am deeply appreciative of your mother's approval, but what I am comfortable with may not mirror what they are comfortable with. You only need to say so if you're in agreement with the preferences, but if with their words, You only need to say so if you're in agreement with their preferences, but if not. Baxter had a tendency to act a lot older than he usually was. It was times like this where he smirked entirely too mischievous, then that you were reminded he barely was any older than you.
Well,
I may forget by the time we get there. Conspiratorial looks were exchanged from across the room as you smiled crookedly. Baxter was a real one when it came down to it. Moms were hoping Liz could come along too, so I wouldn't be alone. He didn't look surprised by the suggestion, apparently aware of how it must have, and certainly did come off to your parents to invite their youngest on an overnight trip. But she argued I wasn't going out of state, and I'm still not a kid. I just have to call Liz every day, and I mean call. She won't let me get away with it texting. If I don't, you said you'll call the hotel instead, and the police, and anyone with a phone number to report to the Pepella was on the loose. Baxter snorted. Not laughed, full-on snorted. He covered his mouth, quickly avoiding your gaze, as if he resisted the urge to laugh harder. You didn't know whether he'd seen the original cartoons or one of the more recent ones used of the character, but he definitely got the reference. I was prepared to give you your sister my thanks for convincing your mothers, but it appears everyone has notes on my manners of just these days. Yeah, Mom joked that those old-fashioned black and white striped jumpsuits inmates wore would match your hair, if Liz did call the police on you. How clever. Isn't a black and white tie out of vogue, Luna? You aren't wearing a tie. Trying to suppress a grin with it was nigh impossible, especially relieving the conversation about his vague resemblance to an aggressively forward skunk and criminal. Baxter chuckled, and he put away another pair of pens, the number of which you've long lost count of as he went back and forth.
Charming.
Your family is quite charming, and I do agree. That is only fair. Try to keep in touch with them while you're away. I'll trust you care for my fate to do that much. Sure, I don't want them to worry. Excellent. It's sweet that you care for each other so deeply. The itinerary for the trip was straightforward enough that Baxter didn't need to look at his laptop to read the details. He kept it to his work on the suitcase, to continue his work on the suitcase. Check-in wasn't until 4 p.m. at the earliest, and the drive wasn't so significant that we would be going for as long as he feared. So the plan was to leave around noon, find dinner somewhere in the area when he got there, then check into the lounge in the evening. The first day would be getting there. The second would be exploring the area in earnest. The third day would be taking the morning easy before checking out at noon and head back home. Well, home for you, vacation home for Baxter. That's perfectly reasonable according to him. He wouldn't be overextending himself to prepare on either of the driving days, and you have a good amount of time in the lounge. Besides, if you drove that much early in the morning, you were pretty confident you wouldn't make it back in one piece. Upon further inspection of Baxter's own supplies, there are a few things left to unpack and a few more things you need to buy. I don't suppose we'll need any formal wear, really, but on the off chance we have dinner at a restaurant that necessitates that, I think we're gonna be okay with that, but I'll see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, Baxter. I gotta pack too. Good luck. As he started to make your way out of the master bedroom, his head snapped up.
See you.
Oh, but of course. I'll see you tomorrow, Luna. Have a good evening. Morning came uneventfully, save the final warning from your family about how they would deploy a full-fledged investigation team the minute that something seemed off. You agreed that you would call daily, but didn't do too much to sway the endless worrying. Liz didn't pull any punches either, least of all after your family helped you load your things in the back of Baxter's car. Mom and Liz pulled you into a hug as Mom shut the trunk with a click of finality before she jumped in a squeeze. Don't forget that I'm watching him, Luna. I'll come get you if you need me to. Just say the word. It doesn't matter when, okay? I know. Your family meant well, but it wasn't as if they could forget the 900th time that they reminded you to call and check in on them. Liz snickered at the three of them continued to hold you in a crushing hug.
Good.
Well, if I know, then don't be surprised by what happens when you don't. Can't believe I'm going to be hunted for sports. She just beamed cheerfully in reply and elbowing you in the ribs.
What a pickle.
Right, I trust Luna to do their job, but Baxter, You'll be careful with our child now, won't you? You couldn't see when their faces looked like because of the way that they helped you, but you could hear their apprehension in Baxter's tense laugh.
I can do that.
Of course, you have my words, ma'am. A perfectly gentlemanly response from him, as always. As you were freed, Baxter made his way to the passenger side. He opened the door for you with a sweep of his arm. Bye. Mom and Liz waved you off and you slid inside the car, shutting the door behind you. As soon as the seatbelts clicked, the engine roared to life. You reversed out of the driveway and rumbled away from your neighborhood to the freeway. The familiar sight of Sunset Bird eventually gave way to the prism of Vista City, then to the open space space between here and there. I don't know why I'm stumbling over my words right now. You couldn't smell the salt in the air anymore, and for a moment it felt odd to remember that there wasn't beaches everywhere that you went, even in the same states. The radio set to classical music gave a nice backtrack to Baxter's storytelling of the other trips he's taken with his parents up to the Rocky Mountains. Those memories gave an idea of what to expect when he arrived at the cabin, even though he glazed over some of the details. He even mentioned odder experiences, one of which included getting chased across a river by what he and his family thought was a bear, but it turned out to be a particularly chubby dog who wanted to be friends. You contributed it to the conversation that you recently went out on a trip with Cove to Nevada to visit his mom. Baxter listened attentively as you listened to him. He's been to Nevada before, but the heat was miserable for someone like him. The ride was as smooth as it could be, except for the occasional congestion of traffic. That was always inevitable this time of year. Baxter wasn't the only tourist. Eventually, the massive freeways came down to 2 lanes as the elevation grew steeper and steeper. Roads cut through canyons, giving a scenic view. You still texted your friends and family between conversations and sightseeing until you lost signal. By the time you hit your first official checkpoint, it was late in the day. You stopped at the roadside diner for a bite to eat before finishing the last leg of the trip. After the short final stretch, the car rolled up to a stop in front of a massive log hotel. It towered over your head when you stepped out of the vehicle. Baxter handed the keys to the tending valet. Of course there's a valet. Why wouldn't there be a valet? The lodge was somehow both rustic and fancy at the same time. For an oversized wooden cabin, the doors were big, elaborate wrought handles that you were sure must have cost a pretty penny. It appears that we have arrived. Baxter rounded his side of the car with bags in hand, smiling comfortingly as he stood there empty-handed and staring at the building. Really? I thought we were making a pit stop. Then you'd be shocked at the actual hotel. The steps are paved in gold. Are you serious?
No.
I'm not. You both carried your things into the lodge. Oh, this looks absolutely gorgeous. And it kind of reminds me of the hotel from I'm on observation duty. I'm sure this is probably a real place. I wouldn't be surprised. But, it just looks so gorgeous. You both carried your things into the lobby. You hadn't brought enough with you that you needed to make a second trip. And after all the consideration in his bedroom, Baxter had managed to shave everything he needed down to one big bag and suitcase. The lobby was as big as the front of the building suggested. The light piano music tinkled in the background. Non-traditional chandelier hung from the ceiling, sunlight shining through glass doors and reflecting on carefully cut stonework. A fireplace burned in the far end of the lobby, for whom you can only presume to be guests. Despite all the chairs and couches available for them, there was scarcely a soul. It wasn't cozy, not in the way that you expect it to be, given Baxter only described it as a mountain lodge. It was big and impressive, and even the stairwell seemed to be more fitting for a medieval castle than a homely cabin in the woods. To one side, the front desk was occupied by staff who were busy helping with a large party. We may be waiting for a while. Why don't we set these down? He tugged at the strap of his crossbody bag over his shoulder and lifted his suitcase in his hand, gesturing for you to follow to the nearest open seating area, which was all of them. Footsteps echoed in the cavernous rooms, and when your bags hit the ground, the sound of that did too. Baxter's opted to set his bags in one of the chairs instead of sitting. He had been stuck in the car for too long. He didn't make a point of stretching his legs, though, obscenely, because it would have looked like overly casual for a man such as him.
What do you think?
So now that you've gotten a look, what's your opinion on our temporary abode? Honestly, I feel a little out of place here. My apologies, Luna. That wasn't my intention. Our rooms will hopefully be less ostentatious. They would at least not be so overwhelming in scale. Thanks. But of course. He turned his attention to the front desk. Though the situation hadn't improved at all, there was no significant signs of it clearing up now or in the near future. Luna, would you mind if I make a phone call? I'm considering making a call to my mother.
Honestly?
I do not often keep my parents appraised of my day-to-day life, but I do believe they would be glad to know that I arrived at this secondary vacation. His gaze dropped to the floor as his hand idly sneaked into his pocket to fish out his phone. His formerly polite smile became crooked. I'm not so bad a son that I cannot grant them that. Yeah, don't mind me. Thank you. I won't be more than a few minutes. And I'll have a chance to finally mention the lovely individual accompanying me. His teasing wasn't something to be missed, but it warms your heart to know that Baxter considered your relationship meaningful enough to be mentioned even passing to his parents. Officially withdrawing his phone, Baxter promptly brought up his contacts and made the call. A hand rested on his hip while the other held a device to his ear. His hand craned back to the high ceiling as he awaited the tile dome before a voice too soft for you to hear but loud enough for you to register greeted Baxter. Hello, Mother. It's nice speaking with you. We've arrived at the hotel. The drive went well. He glanced over his shoulder at you before lightly pressing his index finger to his lips, as if to hush you before you can think of saying something. You couldn't help but wonder if she caught on to the we, considering Baxter came to the stay alone in the first place.
Yes.
Ah, yes, I have Luna with me, my neighbor here. Of course, that is the greatest understatement of our relationship. They are quite special. Tell your mom I said hi, you whispered to Baxter. His soft brown eyes lit up with a new warmth, having not expected you to take interest. Luna says hello, Mother. He nodded as she said something in response to him. However, this attention didn't move him from you. As conversations continued on her end, he lightly covered his mouth with his hands. She says hello too, Luna. He smirked while his mother continued on with silence. You weren't honestly sure that he was listening enough to have caught what she said. This is the closest approximation you've ever gone to the vague concept that this was Baxter's parents, and if such a thing was, and it was such a small thing, watching as he spoke to one of them over the phone. It felt so radically different than it did with your other friends. You knew Kira and Mr. Holton just like you knew Derek, Randy, and Terry's parents. And you heard about Baxter's parents all you've heard about Baxter's parents, other than that they were educated and old-fashioned, was that they didn't mind sending Baxter off to Sunset Bird for the summer. They wouldn't see him this season, and so you wouldn't see them. You had to wonder if someday you would get the chance to meet or speak to them directly. It didn't seem like a priority to Baxter. You were only dating for a little while, though, so maybe it was enough to just let them know that you existed in the first place. A few other hmms and yes. Baxter's attention shifted to the front desk, which slowly being vaccinated by the previous group. Ah, Mother, this was lovely, but I do have to take my leave. Take care.
Oh, yes.
You too. And with only a brief goodbye, he hung up and pocketed his phone. He turned to you, picking up his bag and suitcase. Shall we go check in? Yeah. You trailed off after him with your own luggage. The hotel receptionist smiled from behind a white counter, her eyes somewhat weary from the day's work. Good evening. The receptionist nodded, offering her own greeting in reply before asking if you were both checking in. Exactly, and I would appreciate your assistance in doing so. The reservation should be for 2 rooms under Baxter Ward. Handing over his driver's license and credit card, the receptionist made quick work of the computer system and slid the 2 pair of plastic cards through a machine. You're going to be in room 194, and Baxter is going to have the room next to you, 193. She picked up a map and drew a few arrows around the lines. You were directed to take a left and head up to the elevator, or take the stairs to the second floor. With keys and map handed off, you and Baxter departed from the front desk. So, did you want to take the elevator or the stairs? You realized Baxter didn't immediately follow. You turned your back to him as he caught up, gesturing for you to wait. He dug out one of his key cards and offered it to you.
Now.
Elevator. Here. It may not be necessary, but I'd be happy to let you have it just in case. He accepted the room key card wordlessly. Took out one of your own cards in exchange. Baxter gratefully took your card in hand, pleased to have good faith in the matter. The executive's decision was made to take the elevator up to the next floor, given all the bags. Truthfully, with only a night's worth of clothes and supplies, they weren't that heavy. What was more, it was only a floor up, but they installed an elevator for a reason, hadn't they? It'd be a shame to not put their hard work to use. The halls in the hotel were wide. It was easy enough for two people to pass through beside each other, though you and Baxter had to sidestep to make room for others occasionally. As he approached the end of the path where your rooms sat beside one another, Baxter withdrew his keycard and held it against the digital lock with a fluid, practiced motion. Would it be alright if we were to meet later this evening? It was a long drive, and at least, I'm in no rush to hurry off to the next activity. You waved your hand to dispel any concerns, both real and imagined. Sure, that'll be fine. See you soon.
Excellent.
Take care, neighbor. He winked, laughed as he disappeared inside the room and shut the door with a click. Tapping your card against the lock, you followed suit. In comparison to the hotel foyer, the room was cozier. Not by much, but it was much less grand. This looks absolutely amazing. God, it looks... So it looks like it's a 5-sided room. Because there's a corner... Because it's wall. 2, 3, 4... At least, I'm assuming it's at least five walls, if not more. Just because of the way that this is angled. One of the walls was laid precisely with wooden planks. At the center of the room, the headband of the king-sized room bed was situated by some nondescript painting. It didn't seem cramped, in part because of the glass doors that led out onto the balcony, and because of the nearby windows, which meant more light came into the room. It was bright even without the lamps on. In the breeze of the quiet evening up in the mountains, the branches waved to say hello. Setting down your stuff, you started unpacking toiletries and clothes before setting up for a plug at the nightstand for your phone charger. As you unpacked and the sun rays stepped further out of the room, it occurred to you that you owed a call to your loved ones. Any further delay would have led to the offers busting down your door, and it was hand-carved mahogany. Maybe. It didn't take more than a couple clicks through your contacts to pull up Liz's number. She's been the one of the last people you were texting on your way up before the signal cut out in the first place. The phone rang for a second before your sister's voice came through the other line. There is an exaggeration to her tone, a sense of suspicion.
So?
Luna, this better be you and not some impersonator. I'm on to you, Ward, if that is in fact your real name. JQs! So this is what I get for calling.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. And since the actual Luna would complain about it, you're real. The bit of French there doesn't have me skeptical, though. That sounds like Baxter to me. Laughter bubbled up to the surface when Liz joining in on her ends. That's exactly what I wanted you to think. No more questions, Your Honor. There was no way of knowing for sure, but you're pretty confident she was rolling her eyes. Uh-huh. I'm not buying that you suddenly have a capacity for 3-dimensional chess. Isn't 3D chess normal chess? Yeah, that's definitely you. Moving on, I'm glad you got there safe and sound enough that you're keeping up with me. I still don't know about that Baxter guy. He's too formal and stiff for someone younger than me. But I got this. He got you there in one piece. How's the lodge? It's kind of overwhelming. Baxter fits right in here, but I don't know. I'm not very comfortable looking around the building so far. Oh, Luna. It's okay, I'll get used to it, I think. I can manage for a few days.
That's fine.
Alright, well, the offer still stands. Call me if you need to come get you. Thanks. Your older sister listened with the intensity of someone still handling an interrogation. This will do. Just make sure you have some fun and rest, alright? Take pictures. Mom's already started asking why you haven't sent any. They want to see the inside of a car?
Right?
That's what I said. The conversation trailed on longer. Liz weighing on the speakerphone with what had been going on at home since she left. She mentioned that Cove stopped at some point to drop something off from his dad and told her steadily that he said hi. Eventually, Liz tapped it off and mentioned of her own sleepiness. She helpfully reminded you to go She reminded you to go and get some rest before adding that you needed to call her again tomorrow. The phone was promptly tossed aside in favor of preparing for the night. Then came a gentle knock at your door. Baxter, presumably. Baxter, correctly, as he was the only person standing in the doorway once you opened it. Hi, come in. Bowing his head as he stepped inside, he offered her thanks for being quick with the invitation instead of making him stand in the hallway. Reported with the commander in charge. There will be no hunting for tonight. Good. I'll remain on my best behavior to avoid drawing any sisterly ire. Yeah, don't worry too much about that red dot on your forehead. The curve of Baxter's smile widened while he took a quick look around your room. It wouldn't be all that different from his own, but he regarded it as though he were.
So?
It appears you settled in quite nicely. It's late, so I won't keep you, but I did want to discuss our plans for tomorrow. Feel free to enjoy yourself in the morning without worrying much about accommodating me. It should be easy to explore the town if you want, but the lodge has amenities you could try if you're interested. There's a gym around, I believe, along with a pool and complimentary breakfast if you're up early enough for it. As for the afternoon, evening, and night, I'll be pleased we could spend it together. Not hoping for a morning call from yours truly. Baxter didn't do early mornings, or mornings in general. There's no skin off your bones to let him sleep in, especially considering that this was supposed to be a vacation. Well, it was always considered a vacation for Baxter, but the rationale held. He was always so considerate of that view, and such a reason that you would do the same for him. He nervously ran a hand through his hair before a semblance of his Baxter wore painted in confidence returned to his features.
I appreciate the understanding.
I thank you for your consideration. As for what we'll do tomorrow, how would you feel like a hike? There's a lovely trail that starts directly from here. It loops up and around the forest and up at the back and then turns to where we started. It's a bit of a longer path, so we'll could pack a lunch with us to take on the way. I can have it ordered and delivered ahead of time. Hiking could be good, especially with the prospect of seeing some nice scenery. Let's do it. You smiled gracefully. Baxter had his heart set on that outing. Clearly, he made his day by joining by the...
Goodbye for today.
Goodbye for today. I look forward to it then. With that, Baxter took his leave after offering a quiet good night. There was a few hours left before you had to be in bed, so you settled in for the first night of what continued to be a surreal experience. It was spent peacefully, and then you were drifting into an equally gentle dream. The sun peeked through the sheer curtains. The first part of the day was to greet you as you woke up in the sprawling bed that wasn't your own. Maybe a few more minutes. Nothing urgent was happening, right? 10-20 minutes probably passed. It probably passed you before you considered leaving with safety the sheets. But once you managed to unearth yourself from the blankets and wake up a bit, you went through the morning routine and considered the possibilities of the time that remains. Baxter wouldn't be meeting up with you until around the afternoon. Your growling stomach made the decision for you. The first thing on your agenda was getting breakfast. By the time your hunger was sated, Baxter hadn't contacted you. You went to find where the pool was. It Didn't seem swimming would be a likely possibility up in the mountains, but you're glad that you brought your gear anyways. After making a trip to your room to get your things, you were able to find the pool. In retrospect, you didn't know how we missed it. The chlorine hit you before you even stepped in the room. Out before you stretched what looked like an Olympic-sized pool, its water sparkling with cleanliness. It wasn't in your best interest to go for a serious swim, having just eaten and about to go on a hike later that afternoon, so you waited around in the shallow ends. By the time 11 rolled around, your phone buzzed with a new text from Baxter. It was as formally worded as ever. Good afternoon, Luna. I will be ready for our hike shortly. I hope the amenities were to your liking. Awesome, I'll get ready too. And yeah, choices. This place has a lot going on. Wonderful. I always enjoyed how responsive you are. I'll be ordering lunch in the interim. I thought sandwiches might suit our activities for the day. It should be easy to bring along and fine to eat cold. I'd advise straying away from the paninis for that reason. I'll send along the menu shortly. Let me know what you prefer. As promised, Baxter attached a perfectly formatted PDF with set options, which seemed increasingly more complex the lower you scrolled down the menu. There were options for next to everything. What bread, what fillings, what cheeses, what spreads. It was enough to make you forget what was available in the category as soon as you moved on from one section to another. But you hastily made your decision on what seconds, still ticking by in your text order to Baxter, who replied with a blushy smiling emoji. An excellent choice. I'll be waiting in the lobby for the delivery then. Make your way down there as soon as you're able. Take care. After sending off that last text, you hurried off to rinse off and change before heading to your room. Good shoes were a must when it came to hikes, along with a full water bottle. With the weather and time of day being what it was, you hoped it might catch the last dregs of cool morning air before the afternoon really set in. Once you were satisfied you had everything that you need, you returned to the front hotel. The lobby was as cavernously vacant as ever, so it wasn't hard to find the back of a distinct head of black and white hair near the fireplace, with a bag of what were potentially sandwiches. Yet you were certain it wasn't Baxter. It couldn't have been. Sure, his shoes were blacks, the pants were dark gray. He had a gray bag too, which all aired onto the side of monochromatic. But the shirt, his shirt. The man was wearing khaki? It was as if he found a cryptid in the flesh. You never thought you'd see the day where Baxter Ward was wearing a color that he was wearing any color at all. Of course, you knew that it was typically a stranger with the same unique hairstyle and body type, but it was hard not to joke about it. Baxter turned to the sound of your footsteps. Luna. He grinned, jaw tense. Baxter probably would have been more comfortable trotting around the lobby in nothing more than his presumably black and white underwear. I didn't know beige was your new shade of black and white. The teasing edge to your voice did nothing to add to the levity of the situation, as Baxter looked, for a change, truly embarrassed by the situation. He took a deep breath, a very deep breath, with his eyes closed and his hand unintentionally tightening its grip around the bag. His answer finally came out with the same exhale. I only bought one shirt that was suitable for a hike with me on this trip. I've been certain I wouldn't need more than that. He looked so embarrassed. He looked away, hand brushing through his hair again as he worked to find the words. After you left, I found this among my things. Baxter grimaced. He looked at the earnest shirt he'd been hit with a splash from a mud puddle. And regrettably, I did not find anything else. This is the shirt I brought for outdoor activities. The fates would have it that I only found it when there was no time to run out and get a replacement, thus leaving me with a few remaining options: a formal button-down, one of my designer tops, silk pajamas, or... He gestured to the khaki shirt with both finality and defeat. So you own it? Baxter shook his head empathetically. The light in his eyes betrayed his expression with some delight. At least you found his misfortune entertaining to prod at.
Never.
No, I suppose I must have accidentally stolen it from a roommate. I don't know who else would own a khaki button-down other than that prep. My memories at that final pack at dawn before I set out to California are hazy, to say the least. I had believed at the time I took a pale gray sturdy cotton shirt for occasions like this. The low lighting and my waning focus in the moment betrayed me. Of course, morning Baxter struck again. Sighing, he strayed into the thieved attire. He was going to be unpresentable. It should be at least decently so. The sandwich bag fell against his hip as his eyes met yours. I must ask that you keep this a secret, Luna. Sure, but just as you know, I'll be saving this info as blackmail. He snorted through the tension in his forehead, relaxed at the suggestion.
Thank you.
At least you're considerate enough to call it blackmail. As unhappy with his predicament as he was, there was something undeniably sweet about the fact that he hurried to make it at the risk of keeping you waiting. The collar of the shirt was crumpled and parts of it wrinkled, likely from the hasty packing after he finally discovered the horrible mistake. The later couldn't be fixed without iron, but at least the collar would be smoothed over. Reached out instinctively to fix it, incidentally brushing it gently against the side of his neck as he straightened out the crease. Pale skin flushed with sun warmth, picking as your fingers felt against the hollow of his throat. His Adam's apple bobbed, his breath hitching in his throat. His embarrassment managed to ease into laughter. Baxter covered his mouth to stifle the chuckles that echoed through the empty foyer. You tried your best to keep from cackling any more than you already did at his poor beige influence expense.
Well,
regardless of what color I am wearing. Beige. He raised an eyebrow before directing a pair of rolled eyes your way. Right. We should still be able to continue with our plans. It isn't as if though anyone would see me in public like this. Who will the trees tell? Nobody. But remember, I'll always know what happens. Contrary to belief, my ego will endure. Besides what? He turned to face you, then with the first genuine smile you see out of him all day curved down his lips. His free hands fell solemnly on your shoulder by comparison and gave a gentle squeeze. No one will ever believe you. Shaking your head, you adjusted the straps of your bag on your shoulders. Okay, if you're done. No one will ever believe you this happened. Max, you gave you a world-weary glance, as if to say you're already greatly limiting how much you could gun on about it. We can head on out. Let's. He packed away the sandwiches into a bigger, probably grade bag, truly ending his lament about the state of his attire. Once he was certain the food was not liable to be flattered, Baxter gestured for you to follow him out of the hotel to a nearby trailhead behind the building. The path, initially waved and paved, clearly marked. As you continued at a leisurely pace, it eventually narrowed into a larger swath of evergreen trees and beaten ground. The mountain air was sharper than the sea breeze, and you were so used to it. Instead of salt, you can smell pine in between the wafts of liberally applied sunscreen. With a pleasant breeze and the coolest drawn from the stream, the weather was more than ideal for a hike. Trees' broad rows provided cover too, hiding you both from a high afternoon sun. Foliage ruffled at your feet as your shoes kicked up the fallen turf. The path wasn't big enough for you to walk side by side, so Baxter took the front. After some prolonged silence, he spoke up.
Perfect.
I'm glad that the trail matches up what I saw online. It seems like an easy hike as it lacks steep inclines. The path ahead is clear. Yeah, it's been nice so far. And the company makes this all more charming. But look at Mr. Mountaineer over here. Do you hike a lot? He turned his gaze up to the tree canopy, considering the question for a moment as leaves crumpled underfoot. The path sloped hill. I don't go often, but I'm quite used to it if that's the question. I'm not sure if I'm considered it among my personal hobbies, but I'm not averse to it.
I love it.
I welcome the opportunity, in fact, when it's available. That That's shocking. Are you sure you're really Baxter? He said teasingly. His smile turned into a smirk as he pushed a wayward branch out of your way. Excellent, and then I'll take good thing that I'm not out of Then I will take it as a good thing that I'm not yet out of surprises. Though I'll not call myself a mountaineer proper. He chuckled, stopping in place as a partial insult. Baxter glanced over his shoulder at you and watched for any signs of difficulty with your footing. I may be fit to impress on a day hike similar to this, but I knew some people who truly could call themselves wilderness avocados, or however I can pronounce that. The wild types, the types that you could see in reality survivor shows. I wager in the Alaskan wilds, fighting a bear for salmon. You paint such beautiful pictures with your words. Thank you. I'm speaking of the Murrays, the parents and their 2 teens who would regularly go on backpacking trips that would last days and they'd sleep outside in the middle of the woods.
Certainly.
What's more, they enjoyed rappelling down cliff sides. Certainly they had safety gear, but I can't fathom willingly going to such degrees. Or rather, it might be more apt to say that I can't imagine surviving them. Baxter continued on about some of the Murray's exploits and a little of his own reservations about anything else under the sun, including scuba diving. Though you had plenty to say about that between Mr. Holden's entire business and living so close to the ocean. But it wasn't so long before you decided to stop for lunch. It had already been a few hours since you had breakfast, and Baxter hadn't eaten anything yet for the day. There weren't picnic tables along the path, so the task fell on you to find somewhere to take a break. It happened to be the first case that you saw, a nice sunny spot with some nice flat rocks first. How about we take a break over there? Following your raised arm, Baxter eventually nodded in agreement. The 2 of you headed over to the stones and shrugged off your packs. After digging through his bag's contents, he produced 2 sandwiches and handed over yours. The sound of crickling beeswax paper unwrapping announced the start of lunch. My family went to the Redwoods when I was a kid. Have you been? Baxter shook his head, taking another bite out of his meal as he bid you to continue. We went in an RV with the Holtons and had sandwiches then too, but a bird sold Mr. Holden's, and he chased after that bird like it was his last meal.
Really?
Really now? Ma tried to tell him that he literally had 1,000 greens to make more, but he was so sure that he could get it, so he kept chasing after it, and the story trailed on longer than you intended to, but Baxter was so interested every step of the way. While stuffing your face, keeping the conversation fell off on the list of priorities. Baxter followed your lead and dedicated himself to his own sandwich. Real silence was avoided thanks to the delightful world around you. The rustling leaves, the bubbling of water, even a small songbird floated by overhead, landing on a nearby branch. It seemed to stare directly at you and chirp. It was so picturesque that it belonged on a postcard. For the mundane activity of eating lunch, it was almost too much. Could one be overly serene? Thanks for letting me come with you.
Of course.
Of course, I'm all too happy that you accepted my invitation. He polished off his sandwich first and then wiped his finger on a paper napkin. He had been certain to pack those. Perhaps I'm being fanciful, but this feels almost dreamlike. Huh? You understood where that was coming from. Up on the mountain, your everyday life felt so far away. It was far away. You traveled for miles to be here. By the time you were both far from home and in the middle of the unfamiliar, it was nature's domain, untamed in a different way than with your experiences with the ocean. Yeah, I think I get it. It doesn't seem to fit with what I normally do when I'm awake. Yeah, that's certainly true, because most of the time you spend your time with Cove. Baxter reached out and grabbed a leaf from the ground, twirling it around with his fingers. Exactly. As you worked on finishing your lunch, a heavy weight draped on your shoulders. After a beat, you realized it was Baxter leaning on you, apparently having finished lunch and making himself comfortable. His eyes were closed, his dark lashes especially apparent against his cheekbones. His lips parted softly with quiet breaths. For a second, he wondered if he fell asleep again until he spoke up, as if already aware of the fact that he wanted to ask. This is nice. It wasn't as much of an answer. Are you sure about that? I mean, kind of feels like that. Though he did crack an eye open to look up at you from his perch. So, yeah, it is. He closed his eyes again, this time bringing his cheek a little closer into his hollow between your shoulders and your head. Are you tired? Baxter considered the suggestion for a second, then nodded slowly against your shoulder. If you'll let me stay a while, yes. Honestly, I'm not surprised. Alright.
Thank you.
Why, thank you.
You know,
the forest that I grew up in had different types of foliage. Really now, that seems quite fascinating. At least 60% of the plants growing here only exist in this climate. Really? How did Baxter happen to have that fact memorized? Maybe he studied before the trip? Although, with him, maybe it's just not outside the realm of possibilities of possibly you beforehand just cause. Baxter's expression twitched. It wasn't that it was suspicion, at least that then at least 60% of your observation power is wrong. Under your scrutiny, he shrugged and finally answered your question.
no.
He grinned like the Cheshire cat, self-satisfied and smug. His eyes glittered with amusement. I entirely made up that off the top of my head. Although, since I know truly nothing about California wildlife, it may reflect reality after all. Probably not, but I can't rule it out completely. You laughed at his nonsense. He was so blunt about it. At your mirth, his grin grew wider. And he regaled you with the other fake nature facts. He spoke about the California mountain hero. The only North American rodent that ate large bees was entirely made up by man, who normally dresses up in monochrome. But the meal was over at that point, and you did have a trek ahead of you before you can return to the hotel. Baxter separated himself from your shoulder, perky as ever. Trash and scraps were thrown away into the delivery bag. Baxter stuffed into his normal bag.
Good.
Leave no trace. Yeah, we can't be hurting those 60% of lives that may or may not only be found here. With everything stowed away, the two of you slid off the rock and rejoined the path. Both you and Baxter were fully recharged from your lunch break. You continued on your steadily keeping good pace. Without warning, Baxter rooted himself in the middle of the path. Ooh, so what are you plotting now, Baxter, my boy? Oh, look at that. He jerked his head and you followed his gait. Further out the side of the trail is Sheen, flowing swiftly. Interesting. But you immediately knew that what part of the scene caught his attention. Laying across the banks, a tree had fallen over to create a natural bridge. A step around him to get a better vantage point. The trunk had to be there at least 3 feet thick and covered in vibrant green moss. Leaves had fallen from the few remaining branches. Interesting. Baxter's bright eyes stayed on it, and he grinned all the while.
Exciting.
1 minute, please. I need to walk across that. It's simply too perfect to pass on by. He took a large step toward and promptly left the path. Twig snapped. Oh my god, you laughed at his plan. Your hands were lifted to cover your gaping mouth as you watched. He was really going for it. His steps were bouncy as he navigated through the forest brush to the tree bridge. You laughed, but honestly, when else will I have a chance to walk across a tree? Honestly, you have a fair point. There's even a sunbeam shining through the forest canopy. It's like there's a spotlight on it. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. He's gonna fall in the water, won't he? You followed after him. Walking off the path, made you infinitely glad that you weren't wearing flip-flops today. There was a brush blocking the way everywhere. You chose to mimic most of Baxter's movements, but despite his excitement, you still paid attention to where he put his feet. That's good. You dodged what could have been poison ivy and then had to limbo under low-hanging branches between a couple of saplings. Baxter snagged up his shirt on a thorn. Hold on. You carefully unhooked the fabric and saved it from tearing. That's good. Baxter craned his neck to inspect his shirt, visibly relieved it was undamaged.
Glad to hear it.
Oh, I'm glad you decided to come on me with this most fortuitous adventure. Finally, he skipped over some stones and squeezed himself between a group of thick bushes. His efforts were surprisingly grateful. You clambered on the rocks behind him and took a moment to assess the bushes yourself. Going all the way around would be a hassle. There would be a small gap under one of the bushes, but unless you were prepared to crawl, you didn't think it would fit. You followed Baxter's path, lightly bending a few branches out of your way. You got through without any scratches. That's good. Now then, through the gauntlets, catching up on Baxter was easy. This close to the stream bank was mostly stones and short grasses. Baxter subtly placed a foot on the chunk of the tree suspended over it. He tested his weight, then rocked his heel to shake the bridge. The tree gave no sign of giving under the pressure. No matter what he did, he wasn't budging.
Excellent.
The safety check was complete. He gingerly lifted the other foot and stood fully on the collapsed trunk. Even if it was stuck, the wood had to be slick. Wet and round weren't an ideal combination. Your forehead crinkled. Baxter showed no concern for that and rocked further around an inch at the time until he was above the water. One wrong move and you'd be in that river. Baxter showed no concern carefully climbed on. First, you sat down, then pulled up your feet. Yeah, you gotta be careful. The damp bark was unpleasant, especially on your knees as you first crouched. However, you stood up and the tree stayed firm. You breathed a sigh of relief. He went across the stream with his arms out and light steps, heel toe, almost like he was floating on air, his movements smooth and assured. You were unsteady on your feet, but managed to remain upright. That's certainly good. We don't want to fall in the river, since that would be bad. Your stomach jerked as your unsteady stance threatened to hold you fully accountable to gravity. You snapped out your arms wide and furling as you finished another step. It's not as easy as Baxter made it appear to look. Creeping along, you couldn't tell whether to look down or forward. Was looking ahead better for keeping your balance, but the log beneath you was uneven. When you stepped on a particularly lush patch of moss, it squished under your feet. Sidestepping like a crab helped, but you still weren't safe. You switched back to copying Baxter and gritted your teeth through the tilting. You made it to the center of the tree, right over the heart of the stream. Unfortunately, this is where the wood was at its slickest. Ah! You shrieked as you bared over. There was nothing to grab you as your shoes were losing traction on the moist tree. Baxter twitched on his heels at your panic. He saw you tipping to the side, caught the alarm on his face before your attention shot to the water below you. His hands were on your shoulder in an instant. Baxter gritted his teeth, and his hand shook at the edge of his sable. You both were at risk of going over the edge. It's okay, let me go. You nodded at him, and he slowly released a hold on you. I'll be fine now, thanks. No, okay, I thought... Okay, I'm gonna go snatch onto his arm in the security you provided. Before the hiking turned to swim, you repositioned yourself. At this time, he was avoiding the danger zone. You let out a shaky sigh when you gained your balance. Baxter remained uneasy from your fall and probably offered a hand for you to take. You accepted his hands. Why wouldn't you accept his hands? And you squeezed it tight. Then kissed him on the lips. You lean close and careful of both the position on the tree bridge. You wouldn't do to smooch your boyfriend off of a tree. You tilted your face towards you, giving you a perfect angle to your target. You kissed him on the lips, much to his delight. He kissed you back sweetly before pulling away with a smile. I'm quite grateful for my impeccable balance in cases like this. Are you gonna really tell me that this stuff happened to you regularly? Honestly, I would not be surprised if that was actually the case. Like, let's be real. I'm not gonna tell you anything other than that. Well, you'll be surprised. You flash a mischievous grin. At this point, I'm learning to accept whatever from you. It's easier that way.
Good.
You considered asking more details, but doubted that he would elaborate. Suddenly, there was a splash in the stream below. Oh no. A ripple spread across the water, but the cause of it seemed to remain a mystery. There was nothing to be seen. Baxter restored his attention to the log. He tapped it on the trunk, kicking off the loose remnant bark. We don't actually need to go all the way across. Nothing particularly enthralling over there.
Bravo.
I enjoyed a little tryst very much, but I believe this is a curtain call. Alright. You are grateful you wouldn't have to go any further. Yeah, it's certainly nice. You led the charge off the tree as best as you could. Baxter's hand warmed in yours. You both kept each other on the ground until you actually reached the grounds. Thank goodness we didn't fall. The stream was probably freezing cold. Even if you weren't injured, hiking to the hotel while completely soaked sounded miserable. Yeah, it does kind of sound miserable. I wasn't going to let you slip. His voice was full of confidence that you didn't know if you should believe. He followed up his declaration with an elaboration. In the past, many of my stunts had been riskier than this. I sincerely apologize if that worried you. Well, we both made it, so I can't complain now. Back to the trail. You nodded and started squeezing your way past the vegetation in your way. Baxter followed you for a change. Finally, the path was under your feet. It was sure faster than trekking directly through the overgrowth. I can certainly imagine that. Oh, here we go. As the hike resumed, Baxter's jaunty attitude stood out. The entire trip had seemed different, more lighthearted. Usually when he was in a playful mood, nothing was more teasing. He was still very controlled, but out here, now it wasn't the same. Maybe because he was in the middle of nowhere, he felt extra free. Or maybe it was because he already broke character with his unintentional stolen shirts. Or maybe this was a strange possibility to consider. Maybe it was entirely normal for him to act like this and you didn't know. Honestly, I would not be surprised. Gradually, it grew darker and darker. Less light made it through the canopy of leaves above you. The sun slipped behind the surrounding mountains. It was well enough into the evening that you caught sight of the hotel. That's certainly nice that it's like that. You arrived.
To be honest.
Honestly, I'm having many regrets. Are you now? Why are you having many regrets? His tone was light and jokey, but there was something boldly truthful to his words. I should have reserved the rooms for much longer. Everything is ending so much sooner for my tastes. He rubbed a hand through his hair, exhaustingly scraping it back into place. However, at this point there's no helping it. Live and learn, Baxter. We returned to the warm lights of the lobby. The plush red carpet squished squished in a strangely decadent way compared to how gross you felt from the woods all day. Baxter halted you mid-stride with a question. What are your plans now? You hadn't thought that far, but Baxter hadn't been paused long enough for you to question. If you're willing, we could eat dinner together. For example, I heard the room service here is divine. Really? I'm sure that does sound delicious. We could also go somewhere else, but I require a few minutes to change. I don't mind hiding away from the public with you. It certainly sounds sweet. You discovered my evil plan. He sighed dramatically as he chuckled at his fake schemes. I'm honestly not surprised. I should have expected you to figure me out. My true desire is to return to the room and relaxing rather than cleaning up at this hour of night. No worries, I'm not judging.
That's wonderful.
I appreciate it. Now, once we do order food, then tonight will be perfect. Perhaps they'll have a salad? I swear it's not because we have been surrounded by leaves all day. How interesting and quaint. Your stomach gurgled at the mention of food. The new plan was just in time as you headed straight up to Baxter's rooms. He led you the way to his suite, like the hotel was in the back of his hand, though it was a simple layout. I'm gonna say, like I said, it's not that surprising. But under his confident guidance, you reached the destination and he dropped your bags on the floor. The carpet muffled the thump. Baxter spread now his free arms widely, welcoming you in. Please, take a seat wherever you like. Baxter moved toward the nightstand and scrounged up a pamphlet on the hotel service. You sat down at the side table. Baxter flipped through the booklet until he spotted the menu. Found it. He joined you around the table and placed the menu down so both of you could read it. At a glance, most of the options were classic comfort food. It matched the cabin in the wood aesthetics that the hotel was going for. However, it also had a sprinkling of more high-end options to cater to a certain set of its clientele. It couldn't be understood how weird the concept of getting lobster in a hotel was. Honestly, does sound kinda silly. All entries came with seasonal veggies and a homemade roll. In addition, you could also pick up from a side of mashed potatoes, fries, French onion soup, or a salad. Baxter was not decisive as usual. He wasn't sure if that meant he liked his options or was struggling to find something he actually wanted. Honestly, I would probably go with deciding between, just because of the fact that there's a lot of options. You consider the options for yourself and decided on, a shepherd's pie does sound good. Ooh, and a grilled cheese sandwich. Ooh, tomato soup, lasagna, and gnocchi bowl, and turkey. Oh god, these sound so tasty. But as of right now, I think I'm in the mood for a good shepherd's pie. As for the side, you picked your favorite from the list. Do I want mashed potatoes or do I want fries? I think I'm in the mood for mashed potatoes. Yeah, I think I'm in the mood for mashed potatoes. There's nothing standing out on the menu for me, but that makes it easy. I'll get the risotto and side salad. So you're still getting your bowl of leaves after all, which is quite fitting. I am indeed. Baxter confirmed your order again, as well as repeating his own, before swanning over the room phone. He dialed room service and placed the order promptly.
Goodbye.
Yes, thank you, goodbye. He hung up the call and sat down on the corner of the bed. He tapped his fingers on his leg. All that's left to do is wait. You decide to spend the time cooling down from your hike and cleaning up a bit. Baxter cranked up the AC and washed his face with a damp towel. You collected a bucket of ice from the hallway machine and treated yourself to some crisp water. About 30 minutes after the order was put in, a knock rattled the door. Baxter volunteered to get it. Which is nice of him. Hello. He opened the door and let in the waiting staff member. The employee roared in the cart for carrying literal silver platters. They set the food out on the table for you. Please enjoy your dinner. Let us know if you need anything else. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Which is quite delectable, I must say, for myself. Privately, you were impressed by the fanciness of the presentation. The staff member removed their farewells, leaving you to your meals. You reconvened around the table once more.
Well,
This food comes from the restaurant in the hotel. It's not a small operation in preparing it. That's certainly nice to hear. Oh? Chatting and chewing happened in turns. The topic inevitably came to your preference of food. Everyone's always talking about fries and ice cream going well together, but honestly, they're missing out on the obvious. Fries and whipped cream are even better. It's still sweet and salty combination, but you don't have to deal with cold fries. That wasn't even the first strange food that he brought to the conversation. He started off with something innocuous and slip in an oddity to watch your reaction. How many were real and how many felt like the realms of 60% unique plants, i.e. complete and utter nonsense? Honestly, have you ever tried... Honestly, I just want to say this just to catch his reaction. Have you ever thought about trying fries with pies? You tease. You don't think I'm being serious? No, you didn't think he was being serious. It takes a lot more than to find a good flavor combination than rhyming. If it worked like that, then nothing would ever go well with oranges. Sure, Baxter. After many food admissions that made Baxter either the king of weird taste buds or a resigning jester, dinner came to an end. When you glanced at the clock, you found that it was later than you ever would have guessed. It's been a long day. Why am I not surprised at that, though? When you sitting back in your chair, you stretched your arms up. Your legs were feeling the effects of trapezing uphill for miles. A yawn bubbled up when your phone rang. Who would be calling at this time? You put out your phone to check if it was anything that mattered or a spam call. Liz's name showed up on screen. Right, of course your sister wouldn't wait any longer than mandatory check-in. You were late. At least she hadn't jumped straight to the police.
in that case...
You're free to answer that if you like. I can give you privacy. No, it's my sister. You don't have to go anywhere. He tapped on the screen to answer to call and put on speaker. That way you both could say hello. Sup, Liz?
Hey.
Surprise check-in, Luna. Are you still alive? Did that Victorian-era emo man give you any trouble? You can't find Lily at that opener. You were choking. And for all her attempts to keep you safe, Liz was going to be the cause of your death. Baxter was only leaning on the table with his elbows propped up at the counter. Now he was lazily resting his chin on his fists. Hello. That's certainly a unique description. I can't say I ever heard the likes of that before. Oh. She paused. Liz was now aware that she said that in front of so-called a Victorian emo said man. Which I am not too surprised about.
So what?
I stand by it. Hello to you, Baxter. I'm making sure that everything is well with my little sibling. Hope you understand. I do, completely. Fine. Again, so what are you doing? We just had room service for dinner. She's lucky I had to make my own dinner. Like a peasant. Sucks to be you.
Jeez!
Brat, you have room service once and now you're lording it over me. You heard her click her tongue disapprovingly. Where did my sweet baby sister go? On vacation without any peasants. The two of you shot out a few more snipes at each other, none of which were meant to strike anywhere lethal. It was all in good fun. Baxter watched with increasingly entertainment. Anyways, you're clearly still breathing, so I'll let you go. I'll be discourteous to keep you from your suitor any longer. She spoke in a mock formal tone, poking at Baxter. He playfully responded. How gracious of you, Miss Mare. You indeed a gentlewoman.
Bye.
See you tomorrow, kiddo. Yeah, see you too. Why, I'm not surprised this is the relationship that's between the two of them, let's be honest. It's totally realistic, but also not that surprising. It's just one of those things that's just like, yeah, that makes sense how things play out. It's like, what else are they supposed to do at this point?
Take care.
Yes, take care. And I will make sure you take care of them. On that slightly threatening note, Liz hung up. Baxter's lips twitched upward. Your family is charmingly protective. I realize that more and more every day. Protective? More like annoying. Yeah, I could definitely see that as annoying. I understand their perspective, though. I'm not nearly a stranger, and I cannot deny the fact I'm imposing a great deal on your free hours. It's good to be cautious.
Honestly.
I do like your family. At least as much as I can from little to little we've interacted. Speaking of... He lifted his head and his hand fell under his chin and said, forward his brow. In general, I'd never dare to be this presumptuous, but I cannot deny that I'm deeply curious about you as a person. So I'll venture to ask if you'd be willing to share more than about your family history. Oh, that's certainly something. It made sense. Your family wasn't a mother and father who had children born to them. You knew that much. There weren't more ways than when you called it would all to come together. You didn't remember explaining anything to him. Yeah, it'd certainly be a way to go. It's fine. I don't mind talking about it. You could at least give him the highlights. Baxter humored many of your questions about him. Getting to know each other better was a two-way street. I'm adopted, Liz is too. We're from different places and we're adopted at different times. We weren't even born in the same country. It's amazing that we met each other at all. But both of us were really young. We spent most of our entire lives together.
I see.
That's certainly useful. Well, it's fantastic how you made your own beautiful family. Thanks, Baxter. His words made you feel warm inside. You've respected how easily he took it. It made you wonder about his family situation. He had been rather close-mouthed about it so far, and again, the two-way street analogy came to mind. Are you and your parents blood related? Oh, yes, we certainly are. His voice took on a certain amused bent. His lips stretched thin. My parents might have well been through with me as many times over if I wasn't their own flesh and blood. Before you could ask what he meant by that, he chuckled. Sorry, no, that was me being dramatic. They're family and I'm their son. That's what matters at the end of the day, blood related or not. It's nice your parents care about you. You wouldn't voice a flick of worry. I'm thankful for that as well. Now, if I wasn't the boy they raised together in any capacity, then there would be problems. He laughed some more and brought his fingers together to his lips. The topic was over. Well, he pulled out the collar of his roommate's shirt. His gaze searched out the room's ticking clock.
Good night.
It has been a delightful day, but I should not linger forever. There is much to do tomorrow. Good night, Luna. He stood and with a slight wave, he grabbed his bag to go. You wondered how long it would take for him to remember whose room it was. Baxter left without another word. The door swung shut behind him. He sunk lower in a chair, getting comfortable as he waited for his inevitable return. Any moment now he'll come tiptoeing back. Almost as if on cue, the door slammed open. Baxter came through it, walking sultily with the most forced smile possible. This one is my room. The other one is yours. Your laughter burst like a dam flooding in his room. You were aware. Baxter's voice was polite but laced with embarrassment. He had been gone long enough that you wondered if he'd actually tried to use his key on your room and failed. Rather than pushing him away any further, you got to your feet. With you moving to leave, Baxter found his shoes very interesting. Are you to get some sleep? Baxter hesitated to reply. He paused, sensing that he would answer. He just needed a little bit more time to choose the right words.
Well,
I do intend to sleep, but in truth I don't expect it to be soon. I'll be packing after you take your leave, and after that, who knows? That's a lot of words to build a mystery. What do you mean? Baxter chuckled and tapped his foot. I said, who knows, didn't I? crossed your arms, unimpressed. He snorted at you, and it was difficult keeping a straight face. You better explain soon.
All right.
Okay, that's not exactly correct. I admit I know myself fairly well. I am also aware of the drink station lobby that's open at every hour. There's also a fire that stays lit throughout the night as well. I'm expecting that instead of being in bed like a proper young man, I'll end up in the lobby with a cup of tea. You looked at him with wide-eyed intrigue. You pictured with being gathered around a fireplace, hot drink in hand, unless there an appeal to you that you wouldn't deny.
Oh?
He narrowed his eyes and smiled, curved up more. Am I a bad influence here, or are you enablers to one another? I'm a worse influence on you. Really? Who's the one tempting the other to make potentially unwise decisions tonight? I don't think it's you, but then again, I could be mistaken. You'll see. His amusement was tangible, and we're already looking forward to the next outing. I'll text you when I made it to the lobby. His eyes twinkled with a familiar mischief, and he kept your phone close.
See you.
Good night, Luna, for now. With that, you twisted the handle and left. You made it to your own identical room, conveniently right next door. The door's deadbolt clicked shut behind you, and you flicked on the lights. Despite the new illumination, the suite was not as bright as Baxter's room. How was Baxter's room so lively when yours was this? You sat in your cold bed inside. A familiar carpet was spread beneath your feet. The walls were a match, and the same pictures were attached to the wall. Physically, there wasn't a difference. The change of the fact was that now that you were by yourself, after spending all day with Baxter's grin, you were lonely in his absence. But at least that wouldn't be last long. You'll see Baxter again soon, one way or another. The last and only full day of your mini vacation was drawing to a close, and the warm night pressed back and silent against the window panes. You tucked yourself into bed for a night, but you had left all the rooms' lights on. You didn't want to fall asleep yet. Naturally, you idled the minutes away by counting the planks on the ceiling. Eventually, there was that ticklish buzz of the text arriving. Unlocking your phone, you saw that Baxter had sent you a message. It was short and to the point. I'm downstairs. He finally finished packing. There was no need to respond. He knew you were coming. You wriggled out from under your covers and hopped off the bed, eager for the secret meeting. You crept in the hall, which was brightly lit, although all the other patrons were hoarding up in their rooms for the night. No staff were manning the front desk. It was dead quiet and still. As you padded your way downstairs, the omnipresent silence seemed like it was something you could touch, a thin blanket swaddling you, and your footsteps like breathing muffled. In spite of that, the air was fairly cold. The grand foyer with high ceilings and all the mezzanine floors and wide open spaces invited a permanent draft. The central fireplace might come across totally pointless in the middle of summer in California, but that wasn't giving its due. Now blazing bravely against the chill, it was a welcome beacon of comfort. Surrounding the hearth, it was raised on a stone platform. There you could see a lone-seated figure silhouetted against the flames. It was Baxter warming himself by the fire. A paper cup was clenched in his hands, a pale film of steam rising from it. He hadn't changed into his pajamas, still sporting that khaki interloper. He must have counting on nobody else being around to see that horror that late. The dull thud of feet on the carpeted floor heralded your approach. His portrait's smooth transition from profile to three-quarters view. His eyes met yours and he grins. Luna, glad you can make it. Me too, those endless stairs almost had me beat. A wicked set of stairs, aren't they? You were lucky to arrive in one piece. Rolling the thin cup between his palms, Baxter jerked his head over to one side, drawing your attention to a long table up against the far wall.
Very well.
The drink station's over there, if you care to partake. A beverage of some kind might just be the thing to top off our late-night rendezvous. Sure thing, I'll just be a second. After crossing the lobby, you stood in front of the refreshment bar. It's covered in a thick tablecloth and color of fresh snow. There's a neat arrangement of clean crockery hadn't been laid on top. There's a couple jugs of hot water and a wide selection of different drink packets and individual tea bags. Next to that, 2 more urns of pre-made coffee have been labeled regular and decaf. Cargaf off to one side seems to be spiced apple cider. The range of liquids were complete with 3 smaller silvery ones, each containing a different kind of milk. They weren't stingy on the options, that was for her. He decided to go for... as much as peppermint tea sounds tasty, I don't really like the flavor of tea. I just haven't found one that I like, though. I don't like the taste of coffee, plus you shouldn't really drink it late at night anyways. I don't really like the taste of cider, and as much as I like water, I don't like hot water, so I'll get hot chocolate. He picked up a cup, tore open one of the satchels of hot chocolate, and let hot water run over the powder. He mixed it with one of the coffee stirrers nearby, relishing to the sugary context smell. He snapped on the lid and ambled over to the fireplace again, Baxter raising his drink to tap it gently against yours. Welcome back. What's your poison? I went for a bracing cup of peppermint tea myself. Hey, I got hot chocolate. Delightful. A momentary flash of realization crossed his face, and then he let out a huff of amusement. It appears you find yourselves out to jinx it again, Luna. I must apologize for the lack of originality. I promise I do other things in my spare times occasionally. I don't know, Baxter. Twice is a coincidence, but 3 times, that's a pattern. I believe most humans make a pattern to drink liquids that regularly. You snorted quietly into your cup. Maybe. I'll have to look into it. Baxter scooted over on his perch, patting the stonework with a free hand to indicate that you should sit and take a seat beside him. You plopped yourself in front of the fire, relishing the cozy glow on your skin and the heated slabs beneath you. Baxter was staring absently into the grate. As he sat there with him, enveloped in the warmth of the fireplace and the closeness of your presence, you felt sleepy and safe, comfortable, like you could have drifted off right then and there. Baxter slowly sipped his tea and then set his cup down next to him. It's funny, more than once on this little incursion, I found myself forgetting that I'm supposed to be on a summer vacation. Especially right now, curled up in front of a fire, creating a cup of something hot, puts me in the mind of long autumn nights when the days are beginning to waste away to nothing. This decor, too, the wood, the stone, the grandeur. I might have believed myself to be back in my childhood home in Oregon. Really? He lifted a leg onto the edge and tucked his knee beneath his chin. He was still focused on the burning light. His expression was distant, wishful. Yes, it's the reason I chose this hotel, as a matter of fact. Though I never lived in the building on this scale, the effect is similar. You could say that I was raised in a big cool house. Cool in the sense that it's impressive rather than underheated. That was what my friends used to call it. I loved it whenever they came to visit. There was scarcely anything better. They never got over the sense of awe. I ate it up. I liked to think myself something special in those days. To be young and innocent. His features melded into a form that was more familiar, a curt small smile. How strange. Usually I find myself indulging in nostalgia to an unpleasant endeavor, but here and now it's easy and nice. I suppose it's because for once I can share my thoughts with another person rather than ruminating on the past by myself. He peeked at an assistance for you before returning once to the flames. You let yourself fully rest against him, one cheek on the side of your head. He leaned into it and gave a sigh of pleasure. Yeah, made him happy. It hadn't been easy to find anyone to reminisce with, not for a while. But then again, I only developed a sentimentality once I had gone off to college. I was too young and proud for that sort of matter before then. There wasn't anything in my life to harbor such sentimentality for. I suppose leaving was the catalyst, isn't it always? But once that part of my mind had developed, there wasn't anyone around to share my emotions with. My classmates and I, we don't have that kind of relationship.
Well.
Now, this might be a complete shock to you, but I've been told that I can come across as a bit forward. I know, it can be hard to believe. Your face cracked into a grin. Understatement of the year, anybody? My intent is to be open with people so we can connect. It's almost never works out that way, though. I had to come to terms with the fact that I don't possess that knack for making friends. It was obnoxiously easy when I was a child, especially due to that aforementioned big cool house. But now I keep finding myself at a loss for how to do it. With a hit-or-miss endeavor, the vast majority of the time I come up with a miss. Only lately it's been different. Incredibly different. I almost worry and my luck won't last. His voice had dropped into a low murmur, barely audible over the cracking wood of the grate. "Well, I'll be over soon." It was an echo of what he said after your hike this afternoon, but this time it went from one step further.
I wish I could stay.
His eyes were closed now, and the shallow crease had appeared on his forehead. You understood that he was talking about more than your short stint in this hotel. You can visit again someday. Maybe. Who knows? But who knows, really? He lapsed into silence once more, becoming engrossed in his own thoughts. He found that you were doing the same, despaired emotions drifting in and out of clarity. You both lingered a while longer, but your cups had been emptied and the fire was getting low. Baxter sighed. Unfortunately, we best but call it quits here. We can't starve off the morning by avoiding sleep altogether. That sucks, but it's true. You got up from the fire in unison. At some point you started holding hands, though you couldn't remember when. Climbed the stairs and walked down the hall, companionable quiet. Pausing in front of the doors to your room, side-by-side rooms, Baxter cleared his throat, letting his hands fall from yours.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for your company, Luna. It's been an enjoyable evening. Until tomorrow, then. His back was to you as you reached his rear pocket, fetching his keycard. Good night, Baxter. You unlocked the door to your room and stepped inside, heading straight for bed. Collapsed into it, your mind started to lose its grip on consciousness the second you hit the mattress. Next day greeted you, and suddenly, without warning, sunshine streaming in through the windows. The curtains simply stood there and let it happen. You forgot to draw them shut. The end to your miniature holiday had come. You promptly got out of bed and began to pack, following your usual routine as best you could. But you didn't end up seeing Baxter again until 11 o'clock, as promised. He had taken a line after burning the midnight oil, as to make a last mad dash in order to check out at noon. Luckily, you managed to partner without much issue. The two of you loaded up in the car and set off for home. Home, for at least one of you at least, while returning to your normal life. Baxter instead exchanging kind of vacation for another. Or maybe you thought, watching California landscape drift past the window, Baxter was leaving his own version of normal behind right now. The mountainside lodge had been a home away from home for him. It seemed like of life in Oregon, much more familiar than a sleek condo by the sea. You continued to reflect on this as the road rolled out before you. Occasionally you would swap comments with Baxter on random subjects, other times retreating into the privacy on your head. Rapidly you decided on the mountain was fading into memory. You were lucky, you decided, to have seen such a small piece of Baxter. He had entrusted you to shard himself, a tiny spark of light shining from elsewhere deep inside. You understand him better, even only a fraction. That was probably the only glimpse into the real-life Baxter Ward that you'd get. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys have a good day, night, week, month of your lives. And may the stars forever guide your path wherever they might lead you into the future. And I hope to see you guys again soon.